Welcome to Beauty and Gratitude. Thank you all for tuning in tonight. And I'm so happy to have artist Harry Hancock and to share with you guys his quarantine portraits or COVID portraits, if you will. He will talk about his inspirations and the people he chose and the medium he used from his studio in Barcelona. So thank you, Harry, for allowing me to interview you in your studio, virtually, of course, in Barcelona. But I wanted to just share with the world the beautiful art that you're creating. Before we get started, though, I want to talk about 100 Days of Gratitude, which is my book. Some of you know about. It's in our shop, site within celebrity.com shop, or you can go to my website, d'angelothompson.art, to pick it up. And it's a great read. It's really about 100 days of gratitude. So 100 ways to think about gratitude, and also to start your own journey through journaling and writing down 10 to 20 things a day, whether it's in the morning or at night, that you're grateful for. So just consider that. And the intention of this show, as I've said many times, is really to inspire each and every one of you. And thank you for tuning in. And we have a lot coming up, not only this week with Harry, but also next week. We have Kirk Waller, actor. We have Tanya Choi, who's also an amazing brand, not ambassador, but a brand maestro, if you will. She really makes brands look into the future. That's the best way, especially in the beauty and advertising genre of beauty. Also, we have NFLer Reggie Walker, which I'm happy to talk to about some serious issues. So we're going to talk about, dreams, aspirations, real life, things that we all deal with and how we overcome them. And then the following week, we will have Harry's partner, which is Jimmy Cortez, who is a dynamic makeup artist. And if you have a chance to go to at Jimmy Cortez, his Instagram page, you'll see some of his work. I will post some on my Instagram at D'angelo DTBeauty71. I apologize. And you'll see some of his work at the Met Opera. Yeah, the Met Opera in New York City. So I'm really excited about that on November 27th with Jimmy Cortez. And then we have 2 more shows for December. And then that's it for season 1. I'm so excited to bring season 2 to you guys. In February 2021, we'll start. And just stay tuned. I have a lot of goodies already set up for you. So get ready. Let's talk to Harry. Thank you guys for tuning in. Ciao. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Beauty and Gratitude. Welcome back. We have a talented artist, Harry Hancock from Barcelona, Spain. I met Harry years ago in New York City, and I was drawn to his work, his portraits, his fine art, and I really want to talk about his experience and his life and his travels as an artist all over the world. Before I tell his story, I want Harry to tell his story. So welcome, Harry, to the show. Hi, Harry.
Hi, D'Angelo. Thank you very much for having me on your show.
Thank you for coming.
It's great to see you again, both of us in totally different locations from the last time we met.
Yeah.
We met in New York, and I think 3 years ago we both left that city. We went east and you went west.
Yes.
So now we're in Barcelona, where I'm teaching less and I'm painting a lot more, and a few other things too. Really, a few years ago when we left the big city, we were looking for kind of more peace and quiet and quality of life. And we found a lot of that here in Barcelona. The architecture is amazing, the food is incredible, the climate is fantastic. But for us personally, we made a big conscious change in our lives, both of us. My husband, Jimmy, who's a makeup artist, has had a transformative time too. And the 2 of us have come here to Barcelona. We're now living in this fantastic place here in Poble Sec, which is I guess you could say a humble neighborhood of central Barcelona, right on the edge of a beautiful hill, which has parks all over it.
I know exactly where you are, actually. Yes.
Cool.
My ex and I walked around that entire area. And I was like, if I lived here.
There you go. That's exactly what we did. I mean, we visited a couple of times and fell in love with the place together. And we spent all of these visits, just sort of scouting different neighborhoods and thinking, if we did this, where would we be? And as you can see, we ended up here.
I
It was
love
a
it.
leap of faith, but it was quite an adventure. It still is an adventure, in fact. But we're settling in a bit now, and I'm finding my groove as an artist too. Sorry, go ahead.
One question for you. I know you originally grew up in the UK. Which part of the UK did you grow up?
I grew up in the southeast of England, so outside of London in the countryside.
Okay.
However, my family's from the southwest, and it's a very rural place, and that's where they all live now.
Nice.
So I would say, I usually say that I'm from the southwest. It's kind of where I'm more rooted.
Yes. And were you always a painter and an artist as a child?
Always, yes. I grew up in a family of very creative people. And in fact, two of my biggest influences in life are my parents, because my mother is a creative person who paints, who sculpts, who does amazing sculptures in the garden. And my dad is a woodworker turned investment manager. So he has these craftsman skills, which he deploys in various ways around the house. And seeing him working with wood in particular was one of those childhood examples of what sort of good work looks like.
Yes. Yes. And working with your hands, you know, your mom being a sculptor and your dad doing woodwork, it's very relaxing. It teaches you discipline. It teaches you so many things, because I actually grew up in the rural South. I was born in Mississippi. So I'm familiar with just grounding. It's very grounding,
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
being from rural areas. I know that you studied art throughout the years, but you ended up in Florence. So can you talk about Florence?
Absolutely. I could talk for hours about Florence.
Go for it.
When when I left school at 18, I actually went on a trip with my school, and it was a painting trip, which a few of us took to Florence to paint landscapes. And so I went there with my art teacher, and with my art teacher, we visited a school in Florence, which taught what I could say are some traditional skills of drawing, painting from life, from observation. That word traditional, I don't love it. I don't always use it. But there is an implication of a lineage and of history, and the history of Western painting is important to my trajectory, I think. I first visited Italy when I was 14, and I heard this accordionist playing, and I just was obsessed, and I learned the accordion. Then I learned Italian, and I learned art history and art, and everything pointed towards me going to Italy. And so for 3.5 years, I trained in this small atelier in the south side of Florence.
Oh, wow.
This, beautiful kind of artisan quarter, Santo Spirito, San Frediano, where a lot of the old artisans were still working, like basket weavers and carpenters and things. It's not quite the same anymore, but it's still a very beautiful and inspiring place. When that came to an end, I was without a degree still. It wasn't an art school per se. So I went to London and did a BA in art history, which kind of filled in the gaps of the practical training that I had, and broadened my experience of history and contemporary art too.
Okay. So you were saying you studied art history. I know in art history, I remember the Jansen textbook. Did you guys have that in England as well, Jansen art history?
I'm not familiar with it. We had something called Gombrich, which was a big doorstop of a book called The Story of Art.
Thick, yeah. So I found that I went to art school. I went to Pratt Institute for 2 years in Brooklyn. And when I was sitting in my art history class, of course they cover as much as possible, but I found that it was heavy in Western art history and not as global as I think it should have been, but then that would have been a book like this. So did you find a lot of diversity in studying art history, or was it more Western based?
It's a really interesting and important topic, this. As an educator myself, it's something that it's crossed my mind many times. I think of my training as a kind of a deep dive, a sort of a vertical specialization in one sort of geographical mode of art making. So for me personally, I was hungry for that depth and that experience of the, I mean, there are so many artworks produced from Europe, for example, and being obsessed with Italy, it was just, it's Mecca calling me. In London, when I was studying art history, there was some attempt at more breadth, more global reach, but it was a school that was fairly concentrated on the Western canon as well. So actually, I would describe my time in New York as the place, as the time and place where I really branched out in that kind of a way and started to appreciate the sort of different modes of art making. I mean, this mode of art making is very sort of skill reliant. It's quite time, it takes up a lot of time, and it's not always necessary to have either or both of those things. So it's, New York really opened my eyes to a lot of different ways of working. That's where I incorporated things like music and performance, photography, video into my work. And in 2013, I did my first performance piece, which was the cello suite, where I drew as though a cellist on a board right in front of me, which I couldn't see, and I used the cellist bow to kind of draw. So that's one direction that has ensued from that time in New York.
You know what's interesting? The cello is one of my favorite instruments, so it's interesting you would say that. And I remember you painting at a fundraiser that Juliet Silva was doing, and it was with music, and you were doing it on the spot, and you created a beautiful work of art, and you were in your zone. I was like, how can you be in his zone with like 100 people swirling and drinking and music and everything around him? So how do you get into your zone when you're painting?
Ooh, big one. It's not so easy. It's like there's a kind of a ritual thing that you have to go through, and I think it's probably different for everybody. But for me, it requires sort of a good amount of time of just settling my mood and my brain into a kind of contemplative work mode. Even if I have the full day free, well, in fact, that's another thing. If you can have a full day free, that helps a great deal. But even then, it's sort of touch and go as to whether you can really channel your inspiration into something concrete. It's not always possible. So sometimes you have to just say, it's not happening today. Let's do some admin, or or have a nap and come back to it. You know, there's various kind of ways to reinvigorate your kind of mojo for working. I think. But you know, for me, I like to have music. That's a huge important part for me. I listen to it on headphones. I sing along to it. It's like it's always there when I'm painting, and it's music from anything from Vivaldi to Miley Cyrus.
I love it. I'm similar when it comes to writing. I need space and time, so hopefully an open day, and it has the flow. I can't force it. You know, when I try to force it, it's never good. I end up going back and deleting most of it. But when I allow the flow to happen, it can be really beautiful. I know living in Barcelona and New York, pretty much all over the world, London as well, how are the markets different for the art world? You know, the New York market versus the London market versus the Barcelona market?
It's hard to say. I think that probably between large cities like London, New York, LA, there is probably quite a bit of uniformity to the market situation.
Right.
Barcelona is known as a cultural capital and a place with a lot of design, a lot of architecture. The visual art is concentrated more in the Madrid area for Spain, and wait, where was I going with that? I'm sorry.
Yeah, how the market is still a
right.
cultural center. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of connections between those metropolises and their art scenes. And then it's either you're in that or you're outside of it. And Barcelona is not necessarily in it, and to the same degree that many other cities are, but it's kind of a marginal city that could potentially push over into that kind of a market and that kind of a world. But the other part is that it's very kind of, I guess there's a little less competitive edge to it, which gives, which I think I actually prefer, because I'm less concerned about what other people are thinking and doing. And I'm just free to get on with my thing. I can live in a cave in the middle of nowhere, and well, as long as Jimmy's with me, and I'd be happy to produce. But you would put me in that very competitive environment, and I don't know. I think I lose sight. I have this feeling that there's like an inner stream of water inside of my head, and you can't really hear that trickle if there's a lot of noise around.
Yes.
And so it's very important for me to kind of silence everything and hear that sort of inside flow happening, and to tune into it and not lose track of it. You know, it's a meditative process, painting, and I think it's made much more authentic when you have that personal connection and that place within you that nobody else can tell you what it is.
And leaving a city like New York and moving to Barcelona, and I live now here in LA, I needed to get away from the noise and find a little bit more solace in like my writing and my work. And I'm able to create better is my point. And I'm sure you're able to create better without the distractions of New York, because it can be, you know, constantly, even if you're not in it, you know, still feel a part of it energetically, you know?
Yes, yeah.
I know for you during the time of COVID, which is still now, you started painting these beautiful portraits, and this is what caught my eye. It pulled me in, and I'm always looking for what's new. Like these amazing portraits. I see Jimmy there, and I see Juliet Silva. Tell us about these images, these paintings, please.
Well, you know, this thing hit us in February, and you know, you have choices as to how you respond to such a calamity. And for me, I just felt like, okay, so we're shut indoors. That's not too bad. I can handle that. We have no appointments in the near future. That's also something I can handle. And I figured that's probably kind of the best conditions to get some good work done. I thought this is going to be an uninterrupted time. And I have the materials. I mean, there was an element of improvisation to that too, because I didn't have necessarily the canvas and all the paints that I needed, but I made do with what I had. And actually these paintings are done on paper, which it turns out is a great thing to do, because it's very lightweight. And as long as you treat it with something that prevents the damaging effects of the oil from reaching the paper, then you're good to go. And then that makes it something that's you can send around the world more easily too. Yeah. So it made it made sense on a number of levels. But really the process of focusing on this, the subtitle for this exhibition, by the way, was Finding Focus in a Global Lockdown. And I think that word focus was very important, both as a pictorial concept of blurring and focusing on different parts of an image, but also mentally. I credit this project with kind of keeping me on track and keeping my mental state balanced.
It's going to do extremely well once you're able to be out and about and show this work. I think it's going to be pivotal in your career, Harry. I really feel that. And I'm not an art curator or anything, but I do have a strong sense and intuition about things. And let's talk about each work. If we can start at the top and just I'll let you lead.
Should I start up here?
Yeah, that'd be great. Yes.
Sure. So up here is my friend Lisa. We met on an archaeological dig in Sicily in 2004 or 5. And Lisa is actually half Sicilian and half from New Orleans. And we've been friends ever since. There's a very interesting mix of family makeup, I think, New Orleans and Sicily. But she lives in Catania in Sicily now, and we've been friends for all this time. And actually that one was one of the ones where I found that the webcam that I was using was kind of overexposing certain areas. So you can see her hand here is kind of just bright white. Yes. And that's because it was right next to the lamp and it was blasting it. And at first I was like, what am I gonna do? You know, these details are being lost. But I think because I have the experience of painting in person, I know kind of what to expect from different parts of the body and everything. And I know how to kind of express the right angles for telling the story of what that arm and that shoulder is doing. That was a really interesting part of the project, that I was able to kind of lean into that lack of detail and that blurriness and just sort of say, that's how it is, incorporate. And actually, when you look at it, it's like, it just makes sense, like it does when you see it on the screen. Sirjan here is I've not met Sirjan in real life, but his wife, Catherine, was a friend from Florence. She came from the US, and I actually painted her. She's number 2 in the series. And Sirjan, this is in the rural France. I don't know if you can see that beautiful color through the shutters.
I can, yes.
But it's kind of very distinctive rural French palette. He's a musician as well. Actually, there are quite a few musicians in the group too. Up here is my friend Chang and his family. Chang is a bass player. He lives in Beijing, and that's not his job actually. He works more in translation in the cultural sector in Beijing. And he's there with his family, and they were all like dressed in black, and so I was like, get some color in there. So they got these 2 big toys to hug, and that helped a lot. Next to them is Sandhya, my friend Sandhya from Chennai in India. And I asked people to include elements like clothing or background things that showed a bit of who they were. And Sandhya produced this beautiful red sari, and then her nose ring and bindi were also included. And then halfway through the call, halfway through the sitting, she got a call, and I was like, oh, perfect. That's describing 2020 exactly.
Yeah. You know what's beautiful about this particular painting? It draws, like my eye went immediately to it, because that red is often found in paintings in museums, you know, of royalty, if you will. It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's the vermilion color, which is the sort of one of the base pigments for portraiture. But you know, it really draws the eye, that red accent. And actually a lot of old paintings, like old landscapes, put a little blob of red in the foreground to show action in the foreground. And because landscapes are mostly greens or blues, very pale, so to have that little bit of red, it's I sometimes do that, just sort of put a little red thing in the bottom just to next to that we have, sorry, go ahead.
No, what were you saying? And next to her is?
Next to Sandhya is Harris. Yes, so Harris is a designer, and he lives in New Delhi. And we met in London years ago. And for a little moment, he lived in New York, but then moved to India to set up his own clothing line. And in this one, actually, there is some of his design in the background, but it didn't really come out very clearly, so I won't mention that. But what we do have is a nice kind of the reflection in the glasses, actually.
Yeah, and the beard as well.
Yeah, and I know that was one of the things I thought. You know, the webcam itself is part of this story. So when it reflects onto our faces. It has a sort of a bluish complexion, or in the beard in this case. It really sort of told that other part of the story.
Wow.
On the next row, on this side, we have Xavier, Dr. Xavier Salomon, who is the chief curator at the Frick Museum in New York, the Frick Collection.
Ah, I love that museum. It's
yeah, that's it.
It's a former home of a family, right?
Yeah.
Frick family.
Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah, it's one of my happy places.
Mm-hmm.
Xavier and I went to the same school in London for art history, and so when he moved to New York a couple of years after me, we were close friends from that point on. Both lived in Washington Heights in northern Manhattan. And actually in the background, there is one of my paintings. There's a painting I did of my friend Jorge Clar as the River Hudson.
Okay.
That is just on the far side of him, right here. So
Beautiful.
I got to put a picture in a picture type thing.
I love it. Love it. Mm.
Which actually there's more to come, more insanity in that front to come.
Okay.
Next to Xavier is my friend Tammy, whom I worked with in New York. I was a Latin teacher in New York for 7 years. I taught Latin, so 1 year for every hill of Rome. And after that, I became an art teacher, and that sort of was the beginning of the end.
Wow.
I had to devote more and more time to the art. It was kind of more and more evident as time went on.
Yes.
But Tammy is a wonderful kindergarten teacher and early years teacher who now lives in Brooklyn and works in Lower Manhattan still.
I love the yellow on her as well. And one question, where did you teach Latin and where did you teach art?
Both in the same place. I taught at Village Community School in the West Village.
Okay.
Yeah, I started working there about a year after I arrived in New York. Firstly as the Latin teacher, then, I mean, we added a few different things. I taught English for a year. I did various sort of smaller elective classes, including music, and then ended up with just the art, which suited me great.
Yes. Wow.
Yeah. So next to Tammy, we have a couple of boys. My friend Will, his sons Billy and Henry, which is actually a more recent one. I finished that just the other day.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Because at a certain point, we got to something like 20 something, and I was like, when do I stop? And because quarantine comes from the Italian word for 40. I thought, well, there's your number right there.
Wow. That's a great connection. That's beautiful. Wow. 40
yeah, I mean, 40 in sort of biblical times was just a long time. Like 40 days and 40 nights. I read that as just like, it was a long time. So, so in a sense, this expresses that sort of length of time. And the length of everything, of the quarantine, of this project of just constantly painting people.
It's amazing, Harry.
It's been an intense year.
It has for all of us. You know, I work as a makeup artist as well, and I was working in New York for Law and Order SVU. And when quarantine happened, we had a friend get sick at work. 12 days later, he was gone, and like he was 44. And so much light. And the reason I am doing this show is to bring light into the world, Your art brings light into the world. It shows diversity, it shows the beauty, it shows the light of the world. In each place, there's their native light, if you will. It's very beautiful, very beautiful.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's interesting actually, the light issue. Sometimes, like on one occasion, it was raining here in Barcelona, and I was painting someone in England, and it was bright sunshine, no clouds. And I left this sitting thinking that was our weather. So I was all kind of, let's go out and have a picnic. And then you get out and it's just raining. I'm like, wow, how did that happen? It had absolutely transformed my mood into
Wow.
summer mode. It was
Yes.
incredible.
And each painting pulls you into that, for sure. Each painting pulls you into that person's life, if you will. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and it's their own space as well,
Mhm.
which is a big contrast from traditional portraiture, because normally you're either staging something in the background or it's a studio. But
Mhm.
really, on this occasion, my sitters had a lot more freedom to make decisions for their portrait. So
Yeah.
the angle that they put the camera, what they include in the background. I mean, this is filled columns of newspapers where they talk about blocks of colored books and things.
Yes.
But I mean, I'm much more attuned to it nowadays. Whenever I see somebody on screen, I'm like, what's in their background?
Right.
And there's a whole life going on back there.
Yes. I would like to cover two more paintings, and then I would
Yeah,
love to talk a little bit more before we wrap up. Thank you so
right.
much. So Juliet, I think, let's talk about our girl, Juliet.
Let's talk about Juliet. Another person who brings light to the world.
She,
She's a fantastic person that's just always been there for us and always been such a huge supporter and inspirer. When she agreed to be in this series, I was just really, really happy.
yeah.
And she's here in Jersey City,
Mhm.
and I don't know what happened, but halfway through, it just seemed like she was like outdoors, maybe in Hawaii or something. I was actually listening to Hawaiian music at the time,
Oh,
so I think it
wow.
may have colored a little bit what the vibe of her picture was.
Yes. Yes. She's definitely in a Zen place there. It's all in her
Yeah.
eyes.
Hmm.
I love where she is in her life at this moment. It's
Yeah.
beautiful. It's really beautiful.
Thank you.
And next to Juliet is
This is Jimmy's portrait.
yeah.
We call it Jimmy's portrait, but it is actually of both of us. If you look closely in the background,
I
there
see it. Yes.
is the artist at work. So, you
Yeah.
know, this kind of is now playing with the idea of the webcam portrait as this remote scenario. And it's saying, well, yes, it is in theory, but this actually happened in the same physical space.
Wow.
So, yes, it can be remote, but if you're
Mm.
doing it in one space, it kind of gives you a little bit more options, really.
Yes.
I mean, the option of having the artist in the picture, for example.
Yeah.
Um,
Self-portrait, Jimmy's portrait too. Yeah.
yeah,
Love it.
yeah, and for us, I mean, we were big fans of Velázquez, and he was one of my kind of painting heroes growing up. So then there's a figure in the back of Meninas that looks just like this, and so I
Wow.
like that connection. It wasn't intentional actually, but it just kind of happened. I'm not trying to claim that I'm Velázquez or anything.
You know what? But you're Harry Hancock, and that's what's amazing is that you bring your gifts to the world, you know? And what do you find beautiful about painting? So I have two questions. What do you find beautiful about painting, and what are you grateful for?
Hmm. Painting is. What do I find beautiful about painting? It's a very, very, very hard question, D'angelo.
No,
um,
I love the questions.
but it's really making my thoughts race in interesting ways. Um, for me, seeing a blank page go from just white into something that has depth and emotion, atmosphere, story, that is everything for me. And that's something that figurative painting gives you.
Yes.
It's like you pick up a book and the first few words are just words, and then the first few sentences conjure an image, and then before you know it, your eyes have shut off and you're looking in your brain at some other world. And
Yes.
for me, figurative painting is like fiction in literature. It's this creation of another world. It's where you get to write the rules if you like, or if you want to make a point about the real world, you mirror the real world. You try and
Yes.
approximate to what everybody is familiar with to make your point, whatever it is. And really that process is something that has always grabbed me. In fact, there was one moment when my parents took me through London and we walked through Covent Garden, where there are
Mm.
always these portrait artists sketching. And I was very young at the time, and and it happened quite often that my parents would lose me because there's four of us. But on this occasion, I was entranced by this portrait artist producing an eye and then a nose and then the edge of a cheek, and before you know it, a person is on the page. Yeah. And that stayed with me forever. I mean, I was under 10 years old at the time, and to be able to give that experience to somebody would make me very happy. So that's why all of these portraits were actually filmed in the process. And I took a photograph after each brushstroke and created videos with them, which then I set to music.
Oh, wow. I can't wait for this exhibit, my friend. I just can't wait, seriously. And what are you grateful for? It doesn't have to be one thing. What are you grateful for, when you think about life right now?
I think that starts with the people in my life.
Yes.
The first thing I would say, I'm grateful for my husband, Jimmy, who during this quarantine period, I couldn't imagine just being on my own or being with a group of people I didn't like, for example, but to be with someone that you love and that, we've been tested this year, but we've come through those tests and it's really strengthened our relationship. The other people that I would mention are my family. I mean, I mentioned my dad and his woodworking, my mother and her artwork, and then my grandmother who turned 100 this year, who I spoke to this morning.
Wow. 100 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
And to listen to her stories about, the Second World War or, just life in Brighton in the 60s, it's absolutely incredible. I mean, it's like somebody's painting a picture for you.
Wow.
And then to add on to that, I would say that I've been incredibly lucky as a person born into this world. I've been given a lot of opportunities, and I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge those fantastic opportunities to travel and to study, just the opportunity to experience different art forms, different combinations of art forms. It gave me the foundation for a creative life, which I think has the potential for a lot of richness.
Yes. Wow. Thank you so much, Harry. Thank you.
Well, thank you, D'Angelo.
Was amazing. And I'm listening to this entire interview. I was like, I'm going to make this a special. I'm not going to just do, because normally it's 3 guests on one show. I'm going to make this one show, and I'll figure out how to do it because I'm really impressed. I knew a lot about you, and I knew a lot about Jimmy through Juliet. But I'm enamored by both of you, and I definitely want to get Jimmy on this show as well at one point. So thank you for coming on to Beauty and Gratitude.
Thank you so much, D'Angelo. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you.
It's been a real pleasure talking about this work. The exhibition is actually still up on my website, harryhancock.com. There's a special section called Current Exhibitions. And there you'll see also there are videos where I'm talking about different aspects of the work. And I've included some of my own music as well in these videos, which is another big branch of creative work that's come out of this period. I had said to myself, stop limiting yourself and trying to just produce this one thing.
If
creativity comes out, let it out.
I agree. And so harryhancock.com. And what's your Instagram handle?
The Instagram is @harryhancockart.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you for watching Beauty and Gratitude with your host, D'Angelo Thompson on Solivity TV, Fridays at 8 p.m. Solivity Magazine brings you the best in inspiration on Solivity TV. Check out our new shows. Mark your calendars for Solivity Magazine shows by going to solivity.com now.